Few people realize that one of the biggest mistakes a person can make is believing that kindness has no limits. That belief has ended more relationships than most people will ever admit. An empath is often seen as the gentle one, the patient one, the person who forgives again and again. Because of that, many assume an empath can be hurt without serious consequences. They think a few lies will be forgotten, a few broken promises will be accepted, a little disrespect will simply disappear with another apology. But that is not how the human mind works. The truth is far more powerful. Empaths do not break in a single moment. They change through countless moments that slowly reshape the way they see people, trust others, and protect themselves. That quiet transformation is what many never notice until it is too late. The real danger is not making an empath angry. The real danger is pushing them to the point where they no longer care. That moment rarely arrives with loud arguments or dramatic endings. It arrives in silence. It grows through disappointment after disappointment until the person who once gave endless chances finally decides there will not be another one. By then, the version of them that loved without limits is already gone. Many people spend years wondering why an empath suddenly became distant, why the warm conversations stopped, why the messages became shorter, why the emotional connection disappeared, or why every attempt to fix the relationship no longer works. The answer usually has nothing to do with one final mistake. It has everything to do with the hundreds of small wounds that came before it. Modern psychology shows that repeated emotional pain changes the way people respond to relationships. When trust is damaged over and over again, the brain begins protecting itself. Emotional boundaries become stronger, attachment becomes weaker, compassion becomes more selective. An empath does not lose the ability to love. They simply stop giving their heart to those who repeatedly treated it as if it had no value. That is why people are often shocked by the calmness of an empath who has finally reached their limit. There is no shouting, no need for revenge, no desperate attempt to prove a point. Only peace, distance, and a decision that cannot easily be reversed. The greatest consequence is not an emotional explosion, it is emotional absence. Many discover too late that the person they took for granted was quietly carrying the relationship with patience, understanding, forgiveness, and emotional support that can never be replaced. By the time that realization arrives, the empath has already learned one of life's hardest lessons. They finally understand that protecting their own peace is not selfish, it is necessary. In this video, you will discover why empaths stay longer than most people expect, what slowly destroys their trust, the hidden psychological shift that changes them forever, and the brutal consequences that follow once they stop investing their heart in someone who never truly valued it. You will also learn why the strongest response from an empath is often complete silence, why many people regret losing them long after they are gone, and why the version of an empath that returns after deep emotional pain is never the same person who first walked into the relationship. The final lesson may completely change the way you see kindness, loyalty, emotional strength, and human connection, because the biggest surprise is not how much pain an empath can survive, it is how powerful they become after surviving it. Stay with us until the very end, because each part reveals another piece of this emotional transformation, and together they explain why breaking an empath often creates consequences that nobody expects until they are forced to live with them. Welcome to our channel, where we explore the hidden psychology behind human behavior, emotional intelligence, and personal growth. If you enjoy thoughtful content that helps you understand people and yourself on a deeper level, subscribe now and join us for more videos that reveal the truths most people never notice until life teaches them the hard way. One of the biggest misunderstandings about empaths is the belief that they are weak simply because they care deeply. People often judge strength by how loudly someone speaks, how quickly they fight back, or how easily they walk away. An empath rarely fits that picture. They listen more than they speak. They try to understand before they judge. They stay calm while others lose control. Because of this, many assume they can be controlled or pushed around without consequences. But empathy is not weakness. It is emotional intelligence. It is the ability to recognize feelings, understand hidden pain, and see emotions that many people never notice. An empath can often sense when someone is pretending to be happy, hiding disappointment, or carrying silent fear. They notice small changes in tone, behavior, and energy that others completely miss. This awareness is not magic. It comes from paying close attention to people instead of only focusing on themselves. That is why empaths often understand others better than those people understand themselves. They can see the difference between someone's words and their true intentions. They know when a smile is forced. They know when an apology lacks sincerity. They recognize emotional distance long before anyone admits it. Yet, despite seeing these warning signs, many empaths continue giving chances because they hope understanding someone will also help them change. This is where another misunderstanding begins. Many people mistake patience for dependence. They believe the empath stays because they cannot leave. In reality, the empath stays because they believe relationships deserve effort. They believe every person has a story that explains their behavior. They try to separate the person's pain from the pain that person causes others. They choose compassion instead of immediate judgment. Unfortunately, not everyone deserves endless compassion. Some people see patience as permission. They believe forgiveness means there are no real consequences. They assume another apology will erase another mistake. But forgiveness does not mean unlimited tolerance. An empath may forgive many times, yet every broken promise leaves a mark. Every disappointment quietly changes the way they feel. Every act of betrayal removes another layer of trust. Trust is not destroyed all at once. It fades little by little until there is almost nothing left. This is why betrayal hurts an empath so deeply. It is not only the action itself that causes pain. It is the realization that the person they believed in chose to ignore the love, loyalty, and understanding they had been given. The deeper the emotional connection, the deeper the wound. Still, many expect an empath to respond with anger or revenge. They wait for loud arguments or dramatic confrontations. That is rarely what happens. Breaking an empath rarely creates revenge. It creates transformation. The person who once accepted every excuse slowly becomes someone who values honesty more than attachment. The person who once feared losing others slowly becomes someone who fears losing themselves even more. The change is gradual, almost invisible at first, but it reaches every part of their life. Their priorities change, their boundaries become stronger, their expectations become healthier. The pain that once made them question their worth begins teaching them lessons they never wanted to learn but eventually needed. One question continues to puzzle many people. If an empath recognizes unhealthy behavior so well, why do they stay longer than they should? The answer lies in the way they see human nature. An empath naturally searches for the good in people. Even after being disappointed, they remember the moments when someone was kind. They focus on potential instead of patterns. They believe today's mistake does not have to define tomorrow's behavior. This hope keeps relationships alive long after others would have walked away. They often tell themselves that everyone struggles sometimes. Everyone deserves another chance. Everyone is capable of growth. These thoughts come from kindness, but they also create risk. An empath becomes skilled at explaining away behavior that should never have been accepted. They tell themselves the other person is stressed, afraid, overwhelmed, or carrying emotional wounds from the past. While these reasons may be true, they do not erase the damage being done. Understanding why someone hurts you does not make the hurt disappear. Yet empaths continue searching for reasons because they believe compassion can heal what conflict cannot. They also carry emotional responsibility that does not belong to them. They feel responsible for fixing broken relationships, calming emotional storms, solving problems they did not create, and making everyone feel understood. They absorb guilt that should belong to others. They apologize simply to restore peace, even when they were not the one who caused the problem. Over time, this emotional burden becomes exhausting. Every second chance feels like the last one. But another chance always follows because hope continues whispering that this time will be different. Many empaths confuse hope with healing. Hope believes change is possible. Healing requires real action. Hope waits. Healing grows. Hope listens to promises. Healing watches behavior. When promises repeat without change, hope becomes a trap. The empath continues investing emotional energy while receiving very little in return. Their greatest strength slowly becomes their greatest vulnerability. Their compassion keeps them connected to people who are slowly draining them. Their loyalty keeps them loyal to situations that no longer deserve it. Their willingness to understand everyone leaves very little space for understanding themselves. By the time they realize this, they have already spent months or even years carrying emotional weight that was never theirs to carry. The breaking point does not arrive with one terrible event. It grows through repetition. It begins with small disappointments that seem easy to forgive. A lie here, a broken promise there, an ignored message, a forgotten commitment, a careless comment that is brushed aside as a joke. None of these moments seems large enough to end a relationship on its own. That is why they are so dangerous. They quietly collect over time. Repeated lies slowly replace certainty with doubt. Emotional manipulation replaces honest communication. Being taken for granted becomes normal. Constant disrespect becomes expected. Appreciation disappears. The empath starts feeling invisible. Their efforts receive little recognition. Their sacrifices become routine instead of meaningful. The relationship slowly becomes one-sided. One person gives understanding, patience, support, encouragement, and forgiveness. The other simply receives. Emotional exhaustion follows naturally because giving without receiving eventually empties even the kindest heart. Many people assume empaths have unlimited emotional energy because they always seem ready to help. The truth is very different. Every conversation, every disappointment, every hidden tear, and every sleepless night takes something from them. They continue smiling while carrying pain that nobody notices because they do not want others to worry. They continue encouraging others while quietly questioning themselves. They continue showing compassion even when they desperately need someone to show compassion toward them. Eventually, the imbalance becomes impossible to ignore. The empath realizes they are pouring water into a cup with no bottom. No matter how much love they give, it is never enough to change someone who has no desire to change. This realization hurts because it forces them to accept a painful truth. Love cannot replace accountability. Kindness cannot force respect. Patience cannot create honesty. Good intentions cannot save a relationship built on repeated disappointment. What finally breaks an empath is rarely one unforgettable betrayal. It is hundreds of ordinary moments where they slowly discover that their effort is not valued, their feelings are dismissed, and their presence is expected rather than appreciated. Then comes the quiet stage that almost nobody recognizes until it has already changed everything. The empath stops explaining. They no longer spend hours trying to make someone understand how they feel. They stop arguing because they realize conversations without listening never solve anything. They stop chasing people who continue walking away emotionally. Their silence is not caused by fear, it is caused by acceptance. They understand that no amount of words can reach someone who has already decided not to listen. Their emotional world becomes quieter. Instead of investing energy in fixing others, they begin protecting themselves. They choose rest over conflict, peace over constant struggle, distance over endless disappointment. Their kindness does not disappear, but it becomes selective. They learn that kindness without boundaries becomes self-neglect. They begin offering their energy only where it is respected. Trust, once freely given, becomes something that must now be earned. This change surprises everyone because it happens without dramatic announcements. The empath simply becomes unavailable in the places where they once gave everything. Many mistake this silence for weakness or sadness. In reality, it is emotional detachment. It is the moment when the heart finally accepts what the mind has been trying to understand for a very long time. From the outside, it looks like very little has changed. On the inside, almost everything has. The consequences of breaking an empath are rarely loud or dramatic. There is usually no plan for revenge, no endless arguments, and no desire to make someone suffer in return. That is why many people fail to recognize what has really happened until much later. They expect anger because anger is easy to notice. They expect conflict because conflict demands attention. Instead, they are met with silence, distance, and emotional absence. At first, it may even seem as if nothing has changed. The empath still speaks politely. They remain respectful. They avoid unnecessary drama, but underneath that calm surface, an important decision has already been made. The emotional connection that once held everything together has quietly disappeared. This is the consequence that surprises people the most. You do not lose an empath in a single conversation. You lose them long before they physically leave. Their heart begins stepping away while their body is still present. By the time others notice the change, the process is often complete. The greatest loss is not simply losing another person. It is losing someone who genuinely cared about your happiness, your struggles, your fears, and your future. An empath gives emotional support without keeping score. They remember small details that others forget. They notice when your smile is different. They ask how you are really feeling instead of accepting the first answer. They celebrate your victories without jealousy and comfort you through your failures without judgment. These actions seem ordinary while they are happening, but once they stop, their absence becomes impossible to ignore. The encouraging words disappear. The thoughtful messages become rare. The quiet understanding that once made difficult days easier is no longer there. Many people only recognize the value of these small acts after they are gone. Human nature often notices absence more clearly than presence. What once felt normal suddenly becomes something impossible to replace. The emotional safety that existed without effort becomes a memory instead of a reality. Another powerful consequence appears when the empath stops making excuses for someone else's behavior. For a long time, they defended people who hurt them. They explained away broken promises. They believed stress, fear, childhood wounds, or difficult circumstances were responsible for hurtful actions. They carried hope that tomorrow would be different. But once the transformation begins, those excuses disappear. They no longer ignore unhealthy patterns simply because they understand where those patterns came from. They finally realize that understanding someone's pain does not require accepting repeated disrespect. This change removes the emotional shield that once protected unhealthy behavior. The truth becomes impossible to avoid. Many people become uncomfortable because the empath is no longer helping them escape responsibility. There are no more explanations that soften reality. There are no more endless chances without change. The empath simply accepts the facts for what they are. This acceptance also makes them almost impossible to manipulate. Emotional guilt no longer controls their decisions. Empty promises lose their power. Love bombing, emotional pressure, and repeated apologies no longer create the same effect because experience has taught them to watch actions instead of words. They become calmer but also much harder to influence. This is not because they stop caring about people. It is because they finally begin caring about themselves with the same compassion they once reserved only for others. Their absence also exposes everything they quietly carried for years. Many relationships depend on the invisible work of the empath without anyone realizing it. They were the one keeping conversations peaceful. They noticed emotional tension before it became conflict. They remembered birthdays, offered encouragement, solved misunderstandings, and made everyone feel included. Much of this work happens silently, without praise or recognition. Once they step away, people begin noticing problems they never saw before. Small disagreements become larger because the person who once calmed emotions is no longer there. Distance grows because the one who kept everyone connected has stopped trying. Suddenly, relationships feel heavier. Conversations feel colder. The warmth that once existed seems impossible to recreate. Only then do many understand how much emotional weight the empath had been carrying alone. Regret often arrives at this stage because people realize they were receiving a kind of care that cannot be demanded or replaced. Genuine emotional presence is rare, and many fail to recognize its value until it disappears completely. The biggest consequence is never what the empath chooses to do. It is what they quietly stop doing. They stop waiting, they stop fixing, they stop rescuing, they stop sacrificing their peace to protect someone else's comfort. They stop placing another person's needs above their own emotional health. These quiet decisions change everything. This transformation also explains why empaths rarely come back as the same person. Many people hope that time will erase the pain and restore the relationship exactly as it once was, but healing does not work that way. Every painful experience teaches a lesson, and those lessons reshape the person who learns them. Deep emotional pain forces self-awareness because it leaves very little room for denial. The empath begins asking difficult questions. Why did they ignore warning signs? Why did they accept treatment they would never accept for someone they loved? Why did they spend so much energy trying to save people who never tried to save them? These questions are uncomfortable, but they become the beginning of personal growth. Slowly, the empath discovers that compassion without boundaries becomes self-destruction. They begin learning boundaries not as walls that keep people away, but as healthy limits that protect emotional well-being. For the first time, saying no feels responsible instead of selfish. Walking away feels wise instead of cruel. Choosing rest instead of constant sacrifice becomes an act of self-respect. Another important change follows. They stop seeking approval from people who never truly appreciated them. They no longer measure their worth by how useful they are to others. Their confidence begins growing from within instead of depending on outside validation. This emotional independence changes every future relationship. They no longer fear being alone because they have discovered that loneliness is often less painful than staying where they are constantly misunderstood. Peace becomes more valuable than attachment. They stop chasing connections that only survive through endless effort from one side. Instead, they begin looking for relationships built on mutual respect, honesty, and shared responsibility. They also stop confusing love with self-sacrifice. For years, they believed loving someone meant giving more, forgiving more, and enduring more. Experience teaches them a different lesson. Real love should never require abandoning your own emotional health. Real love allows honesty, boundaries, accountability, and respect to exist together. Healing changes their personality, but not in the way many assume. They do not become cold. They do not lose the ability to care. They simply become wiser about where they invest that care. They smile again, trust again, and love again, but they do so with open eyes instead of blind hope. Their kindness becomes intentional rather than automatic. Their generosity becomes balanced with self-respect. Their heart remains open, but it is no longer left unprotected. There is an important lesson hidden inside this entire journey, and it reaches far beyond empaths alone. Every healthy relationship depends on appreciation before regret. Too often, people notice value only after loss has already occurred. They assume kindness will always be available tomorrow. They expect patience to continue forever. They believe loyal people will never leave because they have stayed through so much already. But every person has limits, even those with the biggest hearts. Kindness deserves respect, not exploitation. The people who consistently support you, encourage you, forgive your mistakes, and celebrate your success should never be treated as though their presence is guaranteed. Healthy relationships grow through reciprocity. Both people listen. Both people care. Both people accept responsibility. Both people make an effort. When only one person continues carrying the emotional weight, the relationship slowly loses its balance. Emotional maturity is not only about finding people who protect your feelings, it is also about protecting the people who protect yours. It means recognizing quiet acts of love before they disappear. It means expressing gratitude before silence replaces conversation. It means correcting harmful behavior before disappointment becomes permanent. One of the most dangerous mistakes anyone can make is confusing patience with permission. Just because someone forgives does not mean they are unaffected. Just because someone stays does not mean they are happy. Just because someone remains silent does not mean nothing is changing inside them. The strongest hearts often endure the longest, but even the strongest hearts eventually choose the peace they have been giving to everyone else. And once that choice becomes part of who they are, the path ahead begins to look completely different. Breaking an empath never ends the way most people expect. Many believe that enough disappointment will make an empath weaker, quieter, or completely lose their ability to love. The truth is almost the opposite. Pain changes them, but it does not destroy them. It teaches them lessons they never wanted to learn. It teaches them that kindness without boundaries becomes self-neglect. It teaches them that love should never require sacrificing their self-respect. Most importantly, it teaches them that protecting their own peace is not selfish. It is necessary. The person who finally walks away is not the same person who stayed through countless disappointments. They have learned to recognize their own value. They no longer measure love by how much they can endure. They measure it by honesty, respect, trust, and mutual effort. Their greatest revenge is never anger, shouting, or making someone suffer. It is reaching a place where they no longer need validation from the people who once took them for granted. It is finding peace without carrying the emotional weight of those who refuse to change. Real strength is not staying in places that slowly break your spirit. Real strength is having the courage to leave with your compassion still alive. It is choosing wisdom over resentment, self-respect over approval, and inner peace over endless emotional battles. An empath who heals does not become heartless. They simply stop giving their heart to those who never learned how to protect it. So now the question is for you. Have you ever reached a moment where protecting your peace became more important than holding on to a relationship? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments because your story may help someone else who is going through the same journey. If this video helped you see empathy, relationships, or emotional strength from a new perspective, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message today. There are many more powerful insights into psychology, emotional intelligence, and personal growth waiting for you, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. Until then, protect your peace, know your worth, and remember that the strongest hearts are not the ones that never break, but the ones that learn to heal without losing their humanity.